Furiosa! Furiosa! Wasteland! Matt Fried! Today we're going to talk about both Fury Road and Furiosa. We've done many analyses of dystopian films. In fact, I think we've covered all of the dystopian films and end times, technocratic, whatever you want to call them, apocalypse films. We've done the entire genre, Jamie and I, from beginning to end. And we found those to be very insightful, a lot of revelation of the method, a lot of predictive programming. And I wasn't surprised to find that the new installment of Furiosa to the Mad Max world was once again the dark goddess Gnostic savior archetype. Now, the film wasn't terrible. It was enjoyable on many levels. I liked both Fury Road and Furiosa. Furiosa was, aside from a couple legitimate criticisms, almost really good. It was good, almost really good. I think maybe the director's cut will have some of the missing scenes that made the story narrative kind of confusing. For example, we suddenly see Liam Hemsworth's character Dementus at Bullet Farm. We never saw him take Bullet Farm. Apparently he took it. But I think they had to cut it down. It was probably a long film. But overall, very entertaining. But some bizarre esoteric Gnostic symbolism that we have to cover. And it fits into the themes of previous installments. Of course, Beyond Thunderdome is one of my favorite of all time movies. So, no Mad Max, or no Mel Gibsons anymore. Wonder why. Wonder why Mel Gibson isn't in movies like Mad Max. Well, one reason why is that now we have to have the female savior archetype replacing the classic action hero archetype. In fact, in a lot of these narratives, the male hero who might appear in the film, as in this story we have Praetorian Joe who appears, he of course gives his life for Furiosa. Now, I'm not dissing male characters or lead characters that give their life, but it seems like nowadays this is present in the films when the death of the male character is really just to empower the Slay Queen to take over. But before we get to all that, let's rewind and recall that we're in a post-apocalyptic world where nukes have gone off. Everything is radiated. Presumably Australia. Everybody speaks with an Australian accent. They've all been mutated, so to speak. Not everybody, but many of the characters who happen to be near whatever warfare happened. And so presumably now we're, I guess, in the center of the continent of Australia, which is already wasteland. Of course, I'm not going to talk about the first three because we've covered those Mad Maxes, and you can go read my essay that I did on the first three some years back. And they chose as the young version of Charlize Theron, Anya Taylor-Joy. That's interesting because Anya Taylor-Joy has a history of playing the traumatized dissociation character. We did a breakdown with my buddies over at Psyop Cinema a year ago where we covered The Witch, The Menu, Morgan, Last Night in Soho, Split. There's other movies where she is involved in some dissociation, multiple personality type of role. And that would be something like Marrowbone, right? But here, without really knowing where the plot would go, I surmised that would be the same thing. And of course, that's what we got. But we have to touch on the Gnostic themes. So first, let's talk about Fury Road before we get to the analysis of Furiosa. In Fury Road, we have resource wars, the control of the resources. After the nuke blast, of course, that's even more important. That's even more important because resources are few and far between. Essentially, there's just cabbages, peaches, maggots and basically human legs, human leg meat. That's literally all there is in the wasteland. And so the civilization that develops immediately in Fury Road is called the Citadel. This is run by this sort of grotesque mutated figure known as Immortan Joe. And it's very, very clear, very evident that he set up this patriarchal system that's capitalist, that controls and manages resources, including his women, his concubines, his harem of supermodels. I don't know where in the wasteland he found a pack of supermodels, but he did. He's also got a pack of chunk ladies who breastfeed the babies. He's trying to essentially recreate the human race. He wants to have a lineage, a dynasty. But his offspring, it turns out, are constantly mutated. And so there's something deformed and off about this, shall we say, demiurge type of figure who is presenting himself as a male savior archetype. He calls himself Immortan, or Immortal Joe, you could say. And he is worshipped by his war boys, these pale, powdered, donut-like figures who, I called it Fast and Furious Albino Drift, basically, is what this movie is. And the radiated messianic redeemer is able to cause them to even martyr themselves. And they spray themselves with chrome before they go to Valhalla. And he poses as their redeemer and claims that he can resurrect them. He says something akin to, I am the resurrection and the life, something like that. So there's a very Christian borrowed theme here. And I think the idea is that Christianity is right phallocentric, patriarchal religion. And where we're going is that's going to be contrasted with the Gnostic feminine archetype, where we're no longer utilizing technology. We're in harmony with nature. We're at peace with Mother Earth, Gaia. All those themes are actually going to be very explicit in the narrative. So I was pretty critical of Fury Road in terms of its symbolism, in terms of its mythology. It's ultimately kind of a nihilistic world where everything is essentially a kind of... it still revolves around supposedly the masculine idea of resource control and technology, and furtherance of that through building civilization around enslavement. So the idea is that patriarchy does create some sort of model of how to live in terms of the future, but it's an enslaving reality based around control. And so human civilization is reverted, as we said, to a very primal sort of warlord situation. It's almost like General Butt Naked, right? If you've read about him, same type of a situation where there's a male-female oppression going on in the narrative, and the liberator figure is this sort of, shall we say, hermaphroditic figure of Furiosa. I'm speaking of the mature Charlize Theron version, where she's saving the seed, these women who have been captured by Immortan Joe, and they are being liberated from the religion of the worship of logic, machines, and tech, because Immortan Joe people worship the steering wheel, which is a symbol for their technology, which gives them the advantage in this world. So now motorcycles and Tonka trucks, monster truck rallies, right? Like Pastor Randy Ball's church. These are really the chariots and the steeds of the future in this apocalyptic wasteland. We find out that the girls who pop up have heard of this place called the Green Place of Many Mothers, and she's going to be taken to this place by... They're going to be taken to this place by Charlize Theron, who's going to be their sort of liberator. This is an Exodus motif where the slaves are being freed from a kind of Egypt to return to this Eden-like state of Gaia, this Eden place known as the Green Place of Many Mothers. There they will plant the new seed, And we find out that originally that Furiosa's mom, who was called Mary, so Mother Mary, we're told that she died on the third day. Now, we don't know about her death in Fury Road. We just learned this fact in the screenplay, in the narrative. But throughout that story, what was evident is that Furiosa ends up having to essentially sacrifice everything because she finds out that the green place no longer exists. It's just a bunch of basically wretched old hags now inhabiting the wasteland who've lost their Edenic paradise. And so the best bet then is to return as a war hero to the Citadel, and now they institute the Girl Boss Order, having overthrown the corrupt patriarchal world of Immortan Joe. This then allows the fat chicks to open up the floodgates of free water. Water was severely controlled by Immortan Joe, creating artificial scarcity. When there was no scarcity, it was controlled. And so again, there's a quasi-Marxist oppression narrative here, where once we get the Slay Queens in control, we'll have freedom, we'll have liberty, everything will be fair, and there will be a distributing of the resources. In Furiosa, we rewind and we come back to a period where the story of the Charlize Theron character, she's presented clearly in this garden as a young girl, and it's a very Edenic place. There's the mention of Valkyries. Again, her mother is called Mary, and we're going to learn how her mother died. But it's very important to understand that this is some place where the greenery has been maintained. So again, Eden, life, and the green trees, the tree of life, has been maintained here. And here she is picking peaches. And peaches, I think, it's a stand-in for the Garden of Eden and the apple. She's picking these things, and they're also, I think, symbolic for her sexuality, because as the film progresses, peaches keep getting stolen and transferred and eaten. Of course, that's obvious. You can figure out what that's a reference to. But she's eventually kidnapped from her Edenic state. She's fallen then. She's sort of like a Gnostic Pistis Sophia who falls into materiality, into the wasteland, into the prison lands. And as she falls into this patriarchal hellhole, she becomes the prisoner of this very, shall we say, Christ-like figure. And he's intentionally, I think, presented with a Christ-like imagery. To be fair, a lot of, cult leaders do take on the Jesus look, but Hemsworth is here playing the villain Dementus, and so Dementus is a rising warlord who will then become a challenge to Immortan Joe, as well as some of the other warlords in this universe. But we find out that in fact he wants to preserve her virginity. So another Christ-like element, he wants to preserve the virginity of Furiosa. Furiosa has been tattooed on her arm with what we presume might be directions to get back to Eden. Eventually, of course, she loses that arm in battle. And notice that, again, in this green land that has survived, it's all women. Only women have survived in this green Edenic paradise. And even though she's taken from this state of purity and innocence, Furiosa, she maintains her virginity and is going to presumably be the bride to the Dementus character in the future. So she's preserved, but he intentionally traumatizes her by actually showing her the death of her mother. And so the death of the mother actually occurs in a cruciform pose. So Mother Mary becomes crucified on the third day, as we saw in the first one, in a cruciform way. And this intentionally traumatizes Furiosa. We find out later that the Dementus character did this on purpose. He did this to make her into this sort of dissociative, transcending limitations of all kinds. Ubermensch or Uber chick, right? So there's the Ubermensch and there's the Uber chick. And he's basically saying, I needed to do this to you. So yeah, I traumatized you and I mistreated you. But hey, but it's for your own good. And after this, she then embarks on her quest with the one positive male character, the Praetorian, who's her fellow driver. He takes her in, trains her, helps her out. And of course, he ends up giving his life for her, which is, it's all wholesome in itself. However, what this does is, again, transform her into something new. She shaves her head off again, her hair off, because she wants to shed the feminine image that she has. She takes on more and more of a masculine appearance, and then when she loses her arm, she takes on, of course, her metallic arm, right? And I think this is to signify that in order to fight what she supposedly is against, this idea of the technological masculine order, to return to her green pastures of Gaia and vajayjays, she needs to become one with the thing that she hates, you see, right? This is the classic sort of villain line. The villain's always kind of giving this narrative that you're just like me, the hero. He's telling the hero, you're just another version of me, right? Heath Ledger says this to Batman, right? And so I don't want to spoil anything, but essentially that's the kind of dialogue we get at the close of the film, is this sort of kind of corny back and forth between the villain and the protagonist. You're just another manifestation of me, and I'm, it's all nihilism. There's nothing. But at a deeper level, there is an esoteric element going on here, because, as we said, if you remember this Gnostic descent into the patriarchal demiurge-run hell world, where everything is about warfare and resources and property, private property, and gas wars. The Furiosa character is spoken of as the fifth rider on the horse. In other words, she's an element of the apocalypse, a fifth rider, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. She's the fifth horsewoman of the apocalypse. Thus, she perhaps is a kind of Scarlet Woman, as the screenplay itself says. And as a Scarlet Woman, she kind of becomes, again, transcending all the boundaries. She has to undergo a catabasis. They descend, actually, when they get to Bullet Farm, down into the layers. It's very reminiscent of Dante's Inferno. At the very bottom, you have a pit of lava there, where they have one of their climactic battles. This isn't the final battle, but we find Dementus essentially going more and more insane. So his name itself signifies his dementia, right? He basically literally goes insane and tells her that she will also have to go insane. This is also reminiscent of Max in Fury Road, sort of going insane and sort of, seeing his dead children and having dissociative episodes. So here we have the same thing. And so her salvation occurs when she transcends the limitations of good and evil, of dark and light, realizing that there's never going to be any green place. There is no Eden. She'll have to create her own Slay Queen Eden, and that's precisely what happens when we move back into Fury Road, right? Because this is a prequel, and eventually she sets up the Slay Queen Order. So a lot of predictable, I guess we could say predictable esoteric themes, because we've covered it so much. But ultimately, this is absolutely the Gnostic female dark savior archetype, overthrowing the patriarchy, and reminiscent in many ways of Barbie. However, I do like the Mad Max style. I've always liked George Miller's cinematography, his directing. So aside from the feminist revenge narrative, this is a really good film. Anyway, that's my breakdown. If you want to learn more about this kind of film analysis, you can get my books over at my website, jaysanalysis.com. In the show description, you'll see a link to the shop, and you get signed copies of Esoteric Hollywood 1 and 2. You can go over to the website as well and read my analysis here of Mad Max up to Fury Road. And you can also subscribe to the website, to jaysanalysis.com, for $4.95 a month, $60 a year. You can also head on over to my Rockfin, which is a great free speech-based platform, and subscribe there. Also, utilize the promo code J44Life to get 44% off all those great products at choq.com, CHOQ.com. That's J44Life, including my favorite, the Tomcat Elite, Tomcat 100, proven to boost testosterone in peer-reviewed studies.